Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes on the show, and with me right now I've got a very special guest. He has worked for numerous independent wrestling promotions. He's worked in ECW, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the USWA, United States Wrestling Association, as well as many other promotions. Pleased to welcome the one, the only, Chad Austin. Welcome, Chad, to Wrestling with Heart.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here. Always looking to give back to the community.
All right, that's what we like to hear. So tell me about your childhood and upbringing. Where are you from?
I am from Baltimore originally. That's where I was born and predominantly raised. I did spend a little bit of time in grade school and in Knoxville, and then again in high school, and now I'm back in Knoxville again. That's where my mom lives.
Okay.
So I've kind of ran the full spectrum as far as wrestling when it comes to my viewing.
It's so fascinating to me because I'm from Nashville, not far away. You're in East Tennessee. I'm, in Middle Tennessee. And I lived in Maryland for a good part of my childhood. So I'm very familiar with Baltimore and that area. So cool. Wrestling up and down the country.
It's a whole different experience, man.
It is.
Even from you being in Nashville, like even like kind of West Tennessee and East Tennessee it's similar in some ways, but in other ways it's completely different.
Yeah, I mean different cultures even,
Time forgot it.
it's
They still
fascinating.
believe. They really do still believe here.
Tell me about your experience, watching wrestling growing up. Were you a fan?
Man, I was always a fan. I mean, as far back as I can remember, like even when I believe I was told that I was at the Baltimore Arena when Billy Graham beat Bruno, but I was 5, in 1977. But I'm pretty sure that I was a monthly arena show goer every month. And of course, when they would wait till the intermission to announce the next card, who was going to be there, of course, every show was, I got to be there. I got to go. I don't care whether it was Bob Backlund versus Mr. Fuji. Oh, I got to see this, and it kind of got expensive, taking a family of like 4 or so to go, to the arena to go see wrestling every single month. But my grandma, who kind of raised me, she did have an in at a ticket outlet. So if I really wanted them, she could pull some strings.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that invested in wrestling and you see wrestlers that you love and have watched for so many years, it's hard to not, it's hard to say no, wanting
Huh.
to go.
Yeah, before I even had my first VCR, which was around 80, like the November, like around Christmas time of like 82, I used to take my tape recorder and just tape the audio of the wrestling shows because I kind of did some child TV acting, like growing up, like local like game shows and stuff like that. So a lot of the times the filming was, during prime wrestling hours, and I wasn't a fan of that. So there was no way I was going to miss any of my wrestling.
Well, that's kind of cool. Child TV acting. How did you get involved with that?
It was something that happened at I guess my grade school. They came looking and doing auditions and everything, and I guess I've always been a jabroni when it came to like being a ham. You know what I mean? So I kind of stood out, and they found the spot for me on a couple of these little local TV shows. And after that, like I was wrestling. Like the first thing I can remember as far as wrestling, I remember like when Greg Valentine broke like Jay Strongbow's leg, and my father was trying to tell me how much BS wrestling was until I put him in the figure 4 leg lock. I had like 6 years old, he kind of learned that it could be a shoot.
It's interesting because when you're that young and you're invested, you're watching, you believe. It's the suspense of disbelief of, these characters, these athletes, and seeing something like that, it makes you, have all these emotions.
Yeah, and I never ever like taped over any of them tapes. And when I started getting VCR tapes, and I would tape wrestling, I never taped over any of them tapes. And I've accumulated a collection to where I didn't even know this. I've had other people bring it to my attention that I have one of the biggest like collection of pro wrestling tapes that's out there. I didn't know anybody else ever did it until the last
Wow.
probably 25, 30 years. I didn't really know, you know. I have everything. I have everything.
Everything.
Oh, I've given stuff to the network, to WWE. I mean, it was supposed to be on lease, or I was supposed to get some sort of credit for it, but who knows where to find any of that stuff at? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's so fascinating. I mean, tape traders, were huge in the 90s. Being able to watch matches from Japan and from Mexico, and you had so many people record wrestling from their area. And a lot of them now are posting it onto YouTube. So it's so fascinating to see like the transition from analog to digital. I think that's so cool. And you were
I
able to do that.
I'm still a little far behind on the transition in the digital. I've gotten about 65, 70% converted to DVD,
Hmm.
but I still do have, I mean, just it's got to be thousands, maybe 1,500 tapes still that I've never converted. But I found a correspondent, probably due to Meltzer, that I've found a correspondent in like every area that I could get tapes from Memphis, California, Mexico, Japan, even when I was, younger. And I've saved it all.
Yeah, I mean, saving it is very important, because you could use it for something.
Well, I don't know what anybody wants to use it for, but who would have just thought that 30, 40 years later there would be people out there,
Yeah.
that now, like, there's stuff that I see now that I go like, I remember having some of that, but I don't know what I ever did with it, or where is it at, like California creative, that kind of crappy wrestling. But as far as Memphis, I've been getting Memphis since, geez, probably 86, 87. I've been getting it every single month. I still do. I mean, but it's now on YouTube. I watch it on YouTube now. I don't get too much physical media.
Yeah, I mean, take care of those tapes. You just never know what you could use it for, because there's a lot of options you have to be able to take that footage and use it for something. Well, let's switch and talk about, your journey in the business. At what point did you know you wanted to become a professional wrestler?
I don't think there was anything else that I ever wanted to do. Honestly, I can't recall. I don't remember wanting to be a doctor or a lawyer or a firefighter and all that stuff. I was always like, I got to be a wrestler. And growing up, when I got a little bit older, probably mid-teens, around then, I have a family member who married a wrestler who was TV. They call them enhancement guys, but they're jabronis. Because I was one, so I'm not afraid to use the word jabroni when referring to themselves. I was a job guy. And Barry Hardy, you probably heard of Barry Hardy.
Hmm.
He teamed with Dwayne Gill a bunch of times, and he was a mainstay on TV, getting beat up by everybody. But he had a ring, and I used to go over to his house, as a young teenager, and be practicing with guys like Axel Rotten was like 16, and who would have thought Axel was 16, already breaking into the business? And I'm wrestling guys that are like 300 pounds, have been in the business for a few years. Cactus Jack, even back then, he came through Maryland, and he was even friends with my uncle. I always knew I wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't go to college for a backup plan. Put it that way, pal.
But once you know you want to do something, you got to find ways to do it. And so you pay your dues, the training process, I am sure it was rough, very intense when I was talking to people on the show before. They talk about how grueling it is. What was
I
your
gotta.
experience like?
I don't have any of that. Like I was never ever formally trained. Never.
Never.
Not one person ever taught me how to take a bump. Anything. It was all stuff that I had just learned by getting in the ring and doing it.
Hmm.
And then as years went on, I would go to the shows, the independent shows, and I helped put the ring up. So I'd be at the building, a few hours before the show would start. So I'd put the ring up. So what do you think a guy like me would do when the ring's just sitting right there and you're in front of an empty building? Of course I got in it. I learned how to run the ropes, how not to run the ropes, and that kind of stuff.
Was there anybody that at least worked with you in the beginning to guide you along?
If I had to pick somebody in particular, it was probably Axel because he was only, I would say, about like he had been wrestling for a couple of years because but really he hadn't really done anything, but he had just gotten back, I think, from Dallas around 91, somewhere around that time period. ECW wasn't even really started yet, hadn't even started. So like independents were there just wasn't much like going on. It was hard. It was really, really hard to find work in like 90, 91, 92, like that era. But we found it, and then Maryland is still going strong today.
What was anything that Axel said to you while you were just learning the business that you still apply to today?
Um, well, I mean, you probably heard it before, especially if you talk to somebody like a Bo James or somebody out there. It's keep your mouth shut and keep your ears open.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's it. And unfortunately, I'm kind of a CM Punk in that aspect where I really don't keep my mouth shut a whole lot, and it has kind of gotten my way a few times, but sometimes it hasn't. Sometimes I spoke up and people saw it my way and said, okay, maybe this guy's got a point or something. But when it came to like ECW, there was no, I didn't say nothing. You know what I mean? There was no like, hey, but what if? There was nope. I just went out there and did whatever was written down for me.
So you got in, learning how to put the ropes up and being a part of ring crew, you're learning the essentials, the basics. Let's talk about some of the places where you've wrestled. Any particular favorite towns that you got to work in?
But I probably if you want to go back and look pinpoint it, I would say 1995 into 96 was probably my favorite era because at that point the independents were a dying thing. Vince had pretty much came in, bought everything. The independents were dying. And at that point, I always wanted to work for Memphis, work for Lawler. And I got a job where I was fortunate enough that my father was the boss, so I worked. I had privileged hours, but I saved up about 10 grand and saved up 10 grand. Had a car. Just one day, I just called Lawler at well Randy Hales. I just called Randy Hales out of the blue and just said, "Look, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm interested in coming to work for you. I know I ain't gonna get paid a lot of money, so I'm bringing money." And I ended up. He gave me Burt Prentice's number, and so I called Burt, and I had already worked for Burt when I came down to hang out with Ian Rotten before when he was living in Louisville. We did some shows for Burt, and Burt really liked me because he never seen like he never seen anybody like me. Basically, an independent Sabu, but I was in like Arkansas, Alabama. You know what I mean? In Arkansas and places like that where he thought it was just like, what is this guy doing? Flips and all this other stuff. So it was just fun. It was my favorite time because I wanted to work 7 nights a week. I wanted to travel. Like a lot of people bitch about the traveling. I don't. Like I embraced it. All right, where are we going to be at tomorrow? All right. And then when you work Memphis, it's the same towns every night. Monday, Memphis, Tuesday, Nashville, Wednesday, Evansville, Thursday, drive home, then spot show, spot show.
It's
So
the
that was that
circuit.
was that was great. Yeah, that was Like you couldn't pull me away from that, except for the amount of oil changes that you had to get for your car because it was easily an oil change every 3 weeks when you're working there. That's easily 1,500 miles.
Yeah, I mean, it is a sacrifice, but if you enjoy what you do and love what you do, they say you never have to work a day in your life. And, you've got all that passion behind you, going from city to city, town to town. Let's talk about some of the people you got to work with over the years. Who are some of your favorite opponents?
I always worked. I always liked this kid. A lot of people hated this guy. He worked in Alabama. I think his name was Ricky Burton. Like the guy was terrible. But Bert put me in there with him, and I pulled something out of him. I don't know what it was, but I like working with him. And then because Bert was trying to pull me back and not let me do as much as I wanted to do, he put me in there with Dundee, and Dundee took a liking to me, and it was me and Dundee for I don't know every night for like 2 months, and that was an experience. But I've worked guys. Unfortunately, I got to work guys like Sabu, Chris Benoit, stuff, guys like that. But the matches weren't like I wanted them to be because they weren't positioned to be like what I wanted them to be. You know what I mean? They were more like squashes. But I still got to work guys. Cactus. At least Cactus gave me stuff, which was cool. When I worked Cactus for Smokey, he walked in and he had just worked with me in ECW like that weekend before. So when he walks in and he sees that he sees me, and he's just like, Chad, didn't I just see you? I was like, yeah. And he just changed the TV, put me in there, and yeah, he gave me a bunch of spots, and I always thought that I had good chemistry with Mikey too. Um, but Mike, I don't know what I did to Mikey or what happened, but apparently he's not a big fan of mine in real life. But we did have good chemistry when we worked in ECW a few times. I was good at taking beatings. I pretty much put it that way. If you, I mean, I could take a pretty good beating, as you probably seen in ECW.
But it's always about getting back up. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had an injury, never had one injury, nothing. I may have, you know, bumped my knee or that may have hurt for a day or something, but I've never sustained any time off the ring, out of the ring for no reason whatsoever, which is very uncommon especially when you do a style, kind of a hardcore style.
Yeah, because you're in there working these guys, and not only are you putting your body on the line, but working for a company like ECW where there's a lot of weapons, and it can get pretty gruesome.
Yeah, it's cool that like that when you work in Memphis and you're working 5-7 days a week, you learn. Nobody really has to tell you. You can't do that stuff every night. It kind of just comes instinctually because you realize yourself, I can't do that. I can't do this again. What I did last night, and then you start seeing the houses too. The houses will affect your performance. But I never gave a less subpar performance. I always won out, but there's some nights that I couldn't just do the same stuff that I did the night before. It just wasn't going to happen.
It's always good to, change things up every once in a while. That way you keep the routine fresh.
Of course, yeah, and I learned that on my own, and I kind of like I'm glad that I'm working where I'm not. I haven't really started working yet here in East Tennessee, but I'm working with some promoters, and I've been to some shows, and I've talked to some kids that I've liked, and I tried to I'm trying to offer a little bit of help, because I've taken this a couple of guys here that I thought had something, and I wasn't going to waste my time. I'm not training somebody from the start. Put it that way. I'm not going in there and teaching somebody how to take back bumps. If I deem that if I see you have talent, I want to work with you. I want to work with you after you've already you've already passed the take and bump part of training. You know how a lot of guys, I don't know how a lot of guys learn how to punch today, but I was Axel showed me this when like 1990, he would stand in front of a wall, like a concrete wall, and he would punch the concrete wall until it didn't hurt. Because you hit it a couple times and you bruise your knuckles and you scrape your knuckles, you
Yeah.
learn how to throw a punch that you could just barely touch the wall and not hurt yourself. But it was kind of genius, but it was primitive, I guess you could say, when it came to punching.
Now, when you're training with when you're helping these young guys, uh, anything that you tell them that, is important, do you have anything that you tell them that they're listening to you? Any pieces of advice that you give them that helps these kids?
Well, nothing specifically. It's individual driven. Not everybody that I work with is a high flyer. You know, or because I'm not a mat guy. I'm not a Dean Malenko type mat guy. I'm more of a toned down spot guy. I like to I'll bring the match down to set up a spot, but I'm not grabbing a Randy Orton chin lock for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? But I kind of just tell kids just nowadays, you really got to go out there and feel the crowd. Like, just because if they're just sitting there just on their hands, give them a reason not to. You know what I mean? It could be something you say. It could be something, um, visual of your facial or something. Give them something. Don't. I never phoned it in. I never would. I would never encourage anybody to phone it in, especially if you're a guy that wrestles maybe twice a month. And they think that there's a. I've been to a couple shows around here where there's been 60 people, maybe. And I can see guys that are like discouraged, but I'm like, dude, when's the last time you've worked? Period. Much less, you're mad because this building only holds 60 people or something. Go out there. This is your ring time.
It's
They
all
gotta they
about
gotta learn that stuff.
it's all about the effort. You have to put in 100% effort, maybe even more, to really prove yourself in the business. You have to really want it. It seems like you really have to show a lot of passion for it, to be good, to get good at anything.
Well, that's what I mean. Where I'm at the stage now where I'm not taking anybody from scratch. You have to already have been trained, maybe a few matches somewhere before I even pretend like I'm going to help you out because I don't have the time, nor am I physically even capable of 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 helping somebody from scratch with the bumps and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't mind. I'm not against if I had a bunch of bookings and somebody was traveling with me that I could like you learn a ton of the stuff in the car. In the car is where you really learn the business, like the business of the business. You probably heard that before too.
Hmm. Now, outside of wrestling, what other kinds of things do you do to help out in your community as far as like, volunteering or charity work or any kind of way to make a difference? Are you involved with any particular organizations or are you doing anything on your own?
It's funny that you even just brought any of this up because this is all like a perfect timing thing. Where I don't know if you follow me on Facebook or on Twitter or anything like that, but as of this week, I have just got the word from my doctor that I am 100% cancer free. I,
Hmm,
I just went through.
congratulations.
I just went through. I had a kidney removed. I never had to go through any chemo or radiation or nothing like that. It was just it was just a miserable feeling, a physical feeling that I went through, and it was an easy. It's been like a 2.5 year kind of thing. So when we started talking, and I had an idea that I wanted to start running shows in East Tennessee, that that I was affected by a lot of the kids that I see, like the pediatric the cancers,
Yeah.
like and I kind of like, dude, they like wrestling. I see a kid that's got cancer on TV and he's got a John Cena shirt on. or and he's got the belt on. And I'm like, that's kind of people that I would like to like help because I can relate to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But so as of right now, I'm working on running a benefit show up here in East Tennessee.
That's so amazing. You're helping kids that are going through a hard time in their lives and struggling, but you're doing it for a good cause. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
they don't know who I am. They've never seen me wrestle, but whatever. But then, if you can like if you can just put a smile on their face, when you if you just meet them, because I had met some kids like at the hospital, some kids, adults, whatever, in the same situation that I am. And then if it somehow got to wrestling, you could just talk to them about wrestling, and it takes their mind off that you're in a cancer center. You know what I mean? You're fighting
Yes.
for your life, and then you were like, so I don't really care about John Cena, but if you like him, I'll give you a yeet.
Yeah. I mean, it's about escapism. Wrestling provides an escape from so many of our problems, our everyday problems, and uh wanting to start something like this is very fascinating. It's very cool that you're able to do that and
It's
want to do that.
it's not as easy as I thought. Like it is a pretty good undertaking, especially if you're trying to handle it all yourself. I'm trying to put this together with as little or virtually no financial assistance from out of my pocket. I'm trying to go with organizations. I'm not trying to, reinvent the wheel or run WrestleMania of the independence of East Tennessee. But I have a little neighborhood that I live in, a little area that hasn't had live pro wrestling, you know, in many, many years. Or at least when they get it, they don't get it on a regular basis. They might get it maybe twice a year, maybe, you know. And I'm trying to I'm working with buildings and different organizations, and I'm trying to put it all together that we can all do it together, you know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sometimes when I got to get up and make calls, it seems like a lot when you look at it on paper, but when you start making the calls and you start, you know, putting it in action, you're like, okay, I got this guy on board. I got this company that wants to step in, and these people are willing to $300. Oh, okay, sure. I can get Jimmy Hart for $300 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it kind of like it's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like it's great to put that pen down and go, wow, I think I did something today.
Yeah, I mean, you're helping, people that have gone through, so much in their lives to escape their problems just for a few hours,
Yeah,
and I think
it's
that's
gonna
really great.
it's gonna take more than me. It's gonna take a lot longer than even when I'm gone. But we're making steps. There is progress. I'm living proof right now that there is life after cancer. You
Hmm.
know, there was a time. I wasn't going to say that I was in that bad a shape, but I was in pretty bad shape. I've lost a lot of weight, which I don't tell any of the girls about it. I just tell them that I look good. I'm slim or whatever. But it's a physical thing you got to go through. It's rough, but I did it, and it can be done. And I have a friend in Baltimore that's going through the same exact thing right at this moment. And we just talked, and I told him I said, listen, man, I'm just one step ahead of you. You're right behind me, dude. Like I just walked out of that cancer center and they said you were cancer free, and you were right there, right at the step where I was. And I'm telling you, you got this. And he was like, all right, brother, and I'm thinking like, wow, I think I put a smile on that guy's face.
And you're making a difference, to other people that are going through a lot in their lives. So if if you can do it, they can do it. So you're trying to set a good example for people that are going through just a rough time in their life.
If I can beat cancer, you can beat cancer. Because you're a star, I'd put you over, a little kid, that I see or something like that, or anything. But yeah, it actually does. I'm not even a feel good person per se. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a person that actually really thought that making a difference or even trying to make a difference would make me feel good. But at the end of the day, yeah, it kind of has.
And that's what it's about, paying it forward and, overcoming obstacles, So,
Unfortunately, the wrestling business isn't exactly the most honest like business if you're trying to partner with somebody and you're trying to raise money for something because a lot of the times the money that they raise for that organization or whatever seems to fall a little bit short when it comes to the ticket sales and how much money was actually accounted. No, I'm not going to pocket anything. Nothing. I don't. There's nothing that I want out of this other than to raise money for a very very good cause and pediatric cancer, man, it's a real thing, and it's not cheap. You know, it's not like you can get cancer, and then it's like, oh, everything's taken care of. No, it's and a lot of kids today they don't have insurance. A lot of it's tough today in the world, and it's not insurance isn't given out. It's not free. This ain't Canada, you know, and so it's really expensive, and I'm finding that out myself. Unfortunately, I do have good medical assistance, but it's expensive.
well, just keep going, keep fighting. I love this idea that you're about to do, and I wish you all the best with it. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Chad, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media or how they want to get in touch with you about this new venture?
I'm pretty much Chad Austin across all the platforms. I'm not as I'm not as active on. I'm getting better at Twitter because I'm learning that I can reach a lot more people than just Facebook or whatever. I also do another podcast with a couple of friends of mine where we watch ECW TV shows in order and we just review them. And the name of that show is Reliving the Extreme. You can find that on all the platforms, and that kind of it kind of takes my mind off of you know certain things. But yeah, I'm pretty much just Chad Austin, and anybody can look me up. Feel free to book me. If you want to be a part of any of the causes that I'm organizing, and just reach out to me, and I'd be glad to do business with you.
All right. Well, Chad, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Sure, man. Thanks for having me. I've checked out a little bit of your previous shows, and you got a pretty respectable show, and I'm glad to be a part of it because it seems like you reach a good amount of people, and you're giving people a platform where they can give back to the community.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No problem, pal.
All righty. Well, thanks so much again, and take care.
You too, buddy.
All right. Bye-bye. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.